So when birds reproduce, we know they have internal fertilization. So male and female birds go through some sort of, often they have a mating ritual, and females generally will choose males based on different factors. Some birds call, some birds have a display, some birds have a dance. This varies from species to species. But when birds mate, male deposits sperm inside of the female bird's reproductive system. Those sperm cells make their way, okay, to the egg cell. And once they fertilize it, that single egg cell that's contained in the blastoderm can start to grow, can start to divide. First into 2 cells, 4 cells, 8 cells, and eventually starts to form an embryo, a bird embryo. And that continues the process until it can eventually hatch. Here's sort of how things look in a chicken. This is for chickens. Different birds have different incubation periods. Some may take longer, some may be shorter. And on chickens, it's about 3 weeks, 20 to 21 days. So here are the stages after just 5 days. This is 5 days after the egg cell's been fertilized. You have a small embryo, okay, inside of the egg. It's surrounded by a membrane, an additional membrane called the amnion. And this amnion holds a fluid in it that sort of also helps cushion the egg. Then it has some other parts which we'll talk about in a minute. There's the yolk sac, which actually is connected into the embryo by vessels, tubes that will carry the nutrients in. So the chick doesn't like eat the yolk. It's not like gobbling up the yolk a little bit at a time. It's absorbing it through these vessels. There's a way to get rid of waste in the allantois. There's the albumin, the air sac, and so forth. So as you see, as time goes on, obviously the embryo grows larger and larger. What happens to the yolk? It gets smaller and smaller because the energy is being used up. The albumin gets less and less because the protein, the water is being used by the chick to grow. So you get to the end stages, and basically there's very little left except for the actual embryo. And once it's in the end stages, about to hatch, it fills up all of the inside of the egg. Turns its beak towards the air sac, eventually pokes its beak into that air sac, breathes in its first breath, starts working its way out of the shell. Every once in a while, there will be a chick that hatches and still has a tiny little bit of the yolk sac attached to its abdomen coming out. All right, so let's look at these parts and
Does it just fall off then?
it can still reabsorb it into its body. When I saw, often other chicks peck at it and eat it. So when we look at the fertilized egg at the beginning stages, we have the embryo surrounded by the amnion attached to the yolk. And then this outer membrane is called the allantois. So obviously the embryo is the developing chick. This organ called the allantois, it's a membrane, it allows for waste to be removed from the embryo. It's attached by vessels into the embryo. It also allows it to take in oxygen. And then this amnion surrounding it acts kind of as an extra shock absorber. This next diagram has sort of a later stage of development. Okay. Again, we have the embryo, it's growing larger, the amnion surrounding it. And now in this view, you can actually see those vessels. There's yolk vessels and allantoic vessels that carry materials back and forth into the actual growing embryo. Okay. You have the yolk membrane surrounding the yolk. And the allantois up here. And then those vessels that carry those materials. The allantoic vessels are used to take in oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide. The yolk vessels are used to absorb the fats, the vitamins, the minerals that are in the yolk. So if we look, this is animation here, just to give you an idea about how the embryo looks as it goes through the various stages. It's kind of neat. Germinal disc is another name for the blastoderm.
Digits.
Like fingers and toes.
Wow, that's a totally.
So because by about 2 weeks or so, like basically the chick is fully formed. It's small, and it continues its growth in size throughout the last week. But overall, it's fully formed.
How does it know when it's time?
It just does. It's all sort of timed by hormones and stuff. So when we buy eggs at the grocery store, like I bought a Hannaford yesterday, obviously they're unfertilized chicken eggs. But fertilized chicken and duck eggs are also, you don't have the slide, you don't have anything, it's just a sort of interesting fact, is that people do eat fertilized chicken and duck eggs as well. It's a food called balut, and it's basically, you can buy them on the streets, you can buy from a vendor, you can buy them even from like a kiosk in the mall. And what it is, it's a shell, it's steamed usually, cooked, fertilized chicken or duck egg that has the embryo still inside. Hello? Thank you. Richard, and this at the end. And so you crack it open, you sip out the juices that are inside. There's like liquid inside. Sometimes you serve with soy sauce or vinegar. You sip it out, and then you eat the cooked yolk, and the embryo and all the other parts are sort of, yeah, the bones are not fully calcified yet, so they're not hard, like you're not going to choke on them. You just kind of. So was the chicken you ate for dinner last night.
Yeah, but that would already lived a good life.
Right? It's not any real, it's no big difference between eating chicken nuggets and eating chicken.
How do they kill it inside?
It's steamed, so it dies when you cook it.
It doesn't look.
So they're cooked. Might look a little strange, but it's really no different.
It doesn't look like you're eating a baby chicken when
They
you're
don't
eating
look
chicken
like
nuggets.
dinosaurs.
So it's about what it looks like. If it's disguised, it's okay.
No,
Yes.
that's still
Yes.
a baby chicken, so it's still not okay, but. Mr. Neuros, how do you know chicken nuggets are chicken?
And not had a life yet. This is
Do
chicken.
you know what kind of life the chickens you really eat have?
Not
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. They
Like
grow.
They go like this. They stay like this, crowded shoulder. They go like that, and they eat.
Nice.
And they stay their whole lives till.
Until they
It's
get
not
their
our
head
fault,
chopped
we don't
off.
do that.
I'm just saying it's
It's just that pretty.
it's a
After that.
common food. So
So you're calling it a
Is that actually like a big thing?
Yeah, it's common in like Southeast Asia. It started in the Philippines, Malaysia, Laos, Thailand. Those are places where it's common
Is
food.
it legal in
Don't.
You can buy Balut, I think, in the U.S. You can probably buy them at certain specialty stores. You can probably buy them. Would you eat one?
No.
Just chicken.
I don't think I would eat it though.
Wait, can you keep the shell?
You don't eat the shell. You break the shell. You like drink out the little juice, and then I'll show you this video. They eat.
Oh, God.
It's not like steam actually. Oh, that looks cool.
What's inside? These kids are
Oh,
so
what's
annoying.
inside?
Oh, I hate these people.
All right, shh, shh, shh.
I hate these
All right, let's go ahead to the actual. I gotta give you your homework too.
What's
All
inside?
right, there you go.
You hook this up with the Balut and got it all warmed up. Let's open one up and see what's inside.
I
So
love
for
this.
2 minutes, breaking it open and just showing us how it works.
Yeah, you can go to the nurse now if you want.
There we go. Hey. So now what? So what do? How do you eat it? You drink it?
Yes. So there's a part inside here.
So it looks just kind of like a hard-boiled egg.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, totally. But just the chicken popping out.
Okay. Bottoms up. Actually not bad.
What is this?
Actually.
That's the article that goes with the questions on the back of this next
Okay,
page.
let's open this one up.
This is homework.
All the way, see what it looks like in there.
Has to be what's inside though. Oh, God.
Did you subscribe to this?
No.
Good, good.
Oh,
They're spoiled. The kid is spoiled brat.
okay.
Lincoln?
Oh, man.
Lincoln's spoiled